Welcome to Life Unravelled, where we unravel life's little mysteries. Today we're looking at telling stories. And how does telling stories help us with our literacy? Well, it's actually a really, really important part of it. So we're going to try and have a look at how we tell stories and how we develop stories and how those stories can then eventually be written into stories for other people to read. And really, life is all about telling stories. I know I tell heaps of stories about my kids and about the dogs and about all things that happen in our lives, emergencies and tragedies and successes, and so it's really important that we're able to tell these stories and that the children learn the skills to tell stories. So we've spoken about an environment that's rich in language, and I'm sure you've all got an environment that's rich in language at the moment. That promotes learning the language, and it also promotes early literacy. So what we're looking at is that over time, with a rich environment of language, children can start to tell stories. So let's have a look at some of the different ways that we can help them and encourage them to start telling a story. Obviously, they need a lot of mentoring. So that's really important to do, and the best mentoring you can do is actually to tell the story. Now, so far they will have learnt to listen, they will be talking and they will have learnt about the print, they have the physical skills that they need. We are really talking about preschoolers and runners at the moment. So let's have a look at telling stories. There are 5 different progressions that you can do for a child to help them tell a story. First of all, you need to read the book. And then what you can do is you can then tell them the story in your own words. And while you're doing that, you talk about the components that they have that are there. Have a look at the different types of what's on the page. Have a look at the beginning, have a look at the end, what happens in the middle, what's the problem, what's the solution. Those sorts of things that are the components of the story, and that's really important for the kids to understand that there is a progression from a beginning, a problem, a solution, and an end. And then you can get the child to read the story. Now, if they don't know the exact words, but by that time they will have read this book hundreds of times, so they probably may know what their words are in the story. Let them read the story and turn the pages at the right time so that they have a very good understanding of that story. And then get them to tell you the story without the book. Now you can do that in puppet format, or you can do that in just storytelling, in actually physically talking. You could do it in drawing, you could do it a whole heap of different ways, but they then need to tell you the story. And try and prompt them and make sure that they have all the different compartments of that and components of the story. For example, if we were looking at the 3 little pigs, then you would have to make sure that there were 3 pigs and that there was a wolf. And so all the characters were there as well. And developing these stories and allowing the children to be able to tell these stories, a very big, important part of their journey towards education and throughout their schooling, at least for their primary schooling. So I hope that gives you a bit of an understanding. I'm going to have a look at telling a story with Wombat Stew. This is the book. One day on the banks of a billabong, a very clever dingo caught a wombat and decided to make wombat stew, gooey, yummy, chewy wombat stew. Platypus came ambling up the bank. Good day, Dingo, he said, snapping his bill. What is all that water for? I'm brewing a gooey, chewy stew with that fat wombat, replied Dingo, with a toothy grin. Oh, look at the kookaburra up the top. If you ask me, said Platypus, the best thing for a gooey stew is mud, big blobs of billabong mud. Blobs of mud? Dingo laughed. What a good idea, righty-o! In they go. So Platypus scooped up a big blobs of mud with his tail and tipped them into the billy can. Around the bubbling billy, Dingo danced and sang, "Wombat stew, gooey brew, yummy chewy, wombat stew." So you can see, first of all, I've read the story to them. And then I'll start to talk to them. If we go back a few pages, what's happening at this page? They've got wombat inside. And then what happens? Dingo's dancing and Platypus comes up. Well, what's the problem? The problem is that Platypus decides that to make a stew you need mud. So you've got to put mud in. So Platypus scoops up the mud and then off he goes. So you can see that there are the components and there are the different parts that you have of the story. So once you've done that, then the kids can start to tell you the story. And then they could start, in this case, I think this would be great to act it out. And they could make invitations for you and make a whole concert, and then they could act out the whole book for you. And those concerts are fabulous for the kids to learning about public speaking, learning about controlling their nerves, actually just playing and having a great time. The more time that they laugh and have fun while they're learning, the better retention they have for that learning activity. So hopefully you've got enough information from there. It's pretty easy if you know the steps. So just remember those 5 steps that we went through. Go through the books that the kids know really, really well and the stories that they know really well, and let them produce in any way they want to. Let them produce their book in any way, in written format, in dance format, in acting format, in drawing. Even some of my kids have actually done Lego stories, and they've taken snapshots of Lego.
You shake my nerves and you rattle my brain. You drives a man insane. You broke my will, but what a thrill. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire.
Well, how do you think that went, Ross?
Oh, well, I think you did a pretty good job. What about a round of applause?
Woo! Hip hip.
That's so much fun.
Hooray!
Hip hip.
And once they've done understood a book, then they'll go from books to their own stories, and they'll start to develop their own stories, and then the sky is the limit. So thanks a lot for listening. I'm glad that you've enjoyed this series so far. There's still more to come, so I will see you next time. Bye.